Not only am I going to give you sell high players in this video, but I actually have a couple of them on my own team that I sent out real offers with, and I'll give you my thought process and show you those offers when we get to them. Starting off with Jake Ferguson, though, I absolutely hate to include him in a sell high video because you go back just like 3-4 weeks ago, I had Jake Ferguson in the buy low video. CeeDee Lamb went down and I went, oh, okay, well, we know Dak Prescott's an efficient passer. We know this Dallas Cowboys defense is one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL. So Jake Ferguson is about to get flooded with targets from a pretty efficient quarterback. So Jake Ferguson, very easy to rank him aggressively, very easy to call him a buy low candidate when he was a low end tight end one, but that's no longer the cost and that's no longer the situation. Where CeeDee Lamb is probably not coming back this week, but I would assume that we are getting CeeDee Lamb back next week. And if that were to occur, we have to just reset our priors with the volume that Ferguson should see in this offense, where we go back and we look at Jake Ferguson's entire NFL career. In 2024, Jake Ferguson averaged 6.1 targets. In 2023, he averaged 6.0 targets. And both seasons, he averaged 4.2 receptions. That's when you have CeeDee Lamb and you have no solid wide receiver two. Well, now you do have a solid wide receiver two with Mr. George Pickens. And maybe you'd say like, oh, Mason, Jake Ferguson's the tight end one in fantasy at the moment. It's not even remotely close with him averaging 9.5 targets a game, 8.2 receptions per game. He's a completely new man. I'd go back to week one and say, hey, he had 6 targets. The same exact player that we had seen through his entire NFL career. So is he the tight end one in fantasy because he is finally broken out and he's finally an elite name? Or is he the tight end one in fantasy because CeeDee Lamb went down and he just got flooded with targets like we said he would in a buy low video? It's probably the latter. So for that reason, while Jake Ferguson has been crushing the other tight ends that are ranked in the S tier of my rankings up until this point, Trey McBride's at 12.5 fantasy points per game. Tyler Warren's at 13.26. Brock Bowers at 10.88. Jake Ferguson's at 17.24. I do expect the volume to come dramatically down. The efficiency hasn't been great. I mean, right now you're sitting with an average of 5.7 yards per target, which is identical to what you had last season. So really, I think that Jake Ferguson's kind of the same tight end that he's always been. And instead of him being the tight end one by a country mile, he's going to be like mid to low end tight end one rest of season. Looking at a trade that I saw in the trade finder on flockfantasy.com, somebody was able to trade Dak, Dowdle, and Ferg for Bowers, JCM, and Evans. And honestly, I'd love to make a move like that where whoever you're trading with for Bowers thinks that they're upgrading. And in reality, I think in the second half of the year, Bowers will probably be better. Now, let's move over to a wide receiver that is on my own fantasy team. We're going to have 2 players from my own team. This one's going to be T. Higgins. Now, realistically speaking, I kind of put out some feelers with my league mates, and I saw that they don't really think Joe Flacco is going to fundamentally change this offense here for the Cincinnati Bengals. But I don't know how your league mates think. If they look at this upgrade to Joe Flacco, where they think all of a sudden you're going to get back to the T. Higgins of last year, then I think you should go through and you should give them the opportunity to buy him. Because realistically, if we look at this Cincinnati Bengals situation, one, I want to address the fact that T. Higgins has been horrendous. This dude's in my starting lineup every single week. He's had 1 game with more than 33 receiving yards, and he's had 0 games with more than 3 receptions. I mean, his yards per route run this season must be one of the worst marks that I have simply ever seen. He is averaging at the moment 0.94 yards per route. Now, of course, a lot of this had to do with Jake Browning being a horrendous quarterback, and I do think that Joe Flacco is an upgrade. Ultimately, the worst thing that you have here, in my opinion, when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals was not the quarterback play, which, keep in mind, was god-awful. It's the horrendous offensive line that got Joe Burrow injured in the first place. And now you have Joe Flacco with limited to no mobility stepping behind that same unit. And you can kind of see what the projections are at the moment from sportsbooks, where they're putting the Cincinnati Bengals before the Joe Flacco trade as 14.5-point dogs against the Green Bay Packers, projected to be the lowest scoring team in the league. And then after the Joe Flacco trade, Projected as 14.5-point dogs against the Green Bay Packers, projected to be the lowest scoring team in the league. So sportsbooks are telling us that Flacco's not going to make that big of a difference. Don't get me wrong. I moved up T. Higgins slightly in my rest of season rankings. I moved him from wide receiver 40 to wide receiver 36. I just don't think we're getting anything close to the T. Higgins that we had last year, and I wasted a third-round pick ultimately. Now, if you are looking at what the projections are for T. Higgins this week, if you think I'm way wrong, you could literally take T. Higgins higher or lower 41.5 receiving yards on Underdog Fantasy. Now, I would warn you of this because, like I said, he's had one game where he's gone higher than 41.5 receiving yards, and he's had 0 games with more than 3 receptions. But if you are interested in that projection on Underdog, you can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description, as well as the comment section. Underdog Fantasy is available in almost every single state. And if you use code FLOCK, you are going to get the best offer that they have done in the 5 years I've been working with them. And that is after you play your first $5, you are going to get $100 added to your account. And on top of that, you'll get a free Jalen Hurts pick, higher, lower, half a total yard for the Thursday night game. And you'll get free questions that you can ask me in the live streams that I'm going to be live streaming every single day until Christmas. Underdog Fantasy is available in almost every single state, and you can find the link in the description and comment section. Now, looking at trades that I would be willing to accept for T. Higgins, where I have Higgins on my team, somebody sold T. Higgins for George Kittle. I would happily take Kittle. Somebody also packaged together T. Higgins and Derrick Henry to go and get Bucky Irving, especially if you're in a 10-team start-7 format. There, the depth's not going to matter at all, and I'd sell T. Higgins for almost anything. Now, I know that this isn't really a sell high player, and this is more so a sell low player, but I just have to talk about him anyway. I nuked him in my rankings. How the hell am I going to be able to come through and tell you to start Kenneth Walker with any type of confidence? Kenneth Walker, through the first 5 games this year, is sitting here with 1 game playing more than 50% of the snaps for the Seattle Seahawks. Now, of course, some running backs can get away with this. If you're David Montgomery, you can get away with it because you can say like, oh, okay, well, at the end of the day with David Montgomery, he's going to be playing one of the best offenses in the league. You're going to have a lot of touchdown upside, blah, blah, blah. You could possibly be in a 50-50 timeshare in a running back by committee and still get there. That's not going to be the case for Kenneth Walker. This is a career low for Walker with his points per game, with his snap rate, with his carries, and with his targets per game. This coaching staff, it doesn't care about Walker's efficiency in comparison to Zach Charbonnet. They are getting Zach Charbonnet the role. They are getting Charbonnet the majority of the snaps and the majority of the touches. So it doesn't matter if you and myself believe that Kenneth Walker is the most talented running back here in Seattle. Until further notice, he's almost unusable. Like, I know that this is absolutely crazy, and I'm not telling you that you have to trade DeAndre Swift for Kenneth Walker, but I moved Kenneth Walker behind DeAndre Swift, Trevion Henderson, and Amari and Hampton in my rankings. Because if I'm looking at this, I could say like, oh, okay, well, Henderson doesn't have the role either. He's not startable in the short term either. But at least with Henderson, 1, he's in a better offense. And 2, it's understandable to assume that the rookie expands his role as time goes on. Amari and Hampton, obviously, we've seen the ceiling case from. I know, obviously, if you're 1-4, you wouldn't sell Kenneth Walker for Amari and Hampton. But if you're a winning team, I'd do it in a heartbeat. DeAndre Swift, here's my thing with Swift versus Kenneth Walker. And I'll let you know right now, the expert average rankings on the site are telling me that I'm ludicrous ranking Kenneth Walker behind Swift. They have Swift at 83 overall and Kenneth Walker at 50 overall. But with DeAndre Swift, while he's not as talented of a running back, he's at a better offense and he sees more opportunities every single week. And he's already through his bye, so you're going to get an extra game. So yeah, like Kenneth Walker doesn't look startable until he proves otherwise. I think you're kind of hoping for a trade at this point. Looking at the trade finder on the site, we saw somebody trade Kenneth Walker for Hampton. If I had a winning record, I would do that for sure. Somebody packaged together Kenneth Walker and Brian Thomas for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Somebody packaged Kenneth Walker and DK Metcalf for Josh Jacobs. I'd be fine with all those deals. Now, let me show you the offers that I made in my league this week. And that is me trying to sell high on Stefon Diggs. Now, you'll see with my offers, I'm not trying to just get a random Joe Schmo back. I'm trying to get solid players. But Stefon Diggs this past week blows up. Stefon Diggs gives you 24.5 points. Stefon Diggs looks phenomenal in a primetime game. He almost brings my team back from the absolute depths to make it where I can move to 5-0. Sadly, I lost. I went to 4-1, but no fault to Stefon Diggs. He did everything he could. And with Diggs, he did it with volume. And this is the continued trend of Stefon Diggs, who wasn't playing enough at the beginning of the year, now actually seeing more and more playing time, where we had in week 4, him go out and post a season high 67% of the snaps. And that's continuing to trend in the right direction in this Buffalo game. And Drake May looks phenomenal. But realistically speaking, if we do look at Stefon Diggs, this is still an incredibly old wide receiver coming off a torn ACL. That's not an every down player just yet. This isn't a super concentrated offense where you do have Drake May spreading the ball out a ton. So with how I'm viewing Stefon Diggs on my own fantasy team is, I am not viewing him as like a locked and loaded top 20 wide receiver every single week without question. Like realistically, my wide receiver room is garbage. Obviously, we're just jamming running backs in our flex spots, but wide receiver, my top 3 guys are DK Metcalf, Stefon Diggs, and T. Higgins. Like I am planning on putting Stefon Diggs at wide receiver 2 over T for most weeks. But with that in mind, if I could take one of my depth running backs and make a trade to get to an unquestioned wide receiver that I'm fine starting every week, like I offered Stefon Diggs and Cam Scatterbo for Rashee Rice. The trade calculator on flockfantasy.com says that's a fair deal. I also offered Stefon Diggs and Nick Chubb for Brian Thomas, where the trade calculator is actually saying that I would win that trade. And I do want to remind y'all, if for the love of God, if you're ever making any trades, please throw them onto the trade calculator on flockfantasy.com. It is completely free and it's going to save your ass from making a devastating move that hurts your team. Now, let's go ahead and let's move over to Michael Pittman Jr. With Pittman, we keep saying like, oh, you know what? The touchdown efficiency may not keep up. You may need to see him get scaled back a bit with his points per game if the volume's not going to be there. And he continues to post a career high touchdown rate. Like the dude is averaging 7 targets per game, which is dramatically down from what we had seen in 2021, 2022, 2023. And even it's about the same as what you had last year in 2024. But the main difference that you have with Michael Pittman at the moment is he's just scoring touchdowns at an extremely high clip, and a small sample is going to make his points per game look phenomenal. Where right now he's the wide receiver 13 in points per game, averaging about 15.5. But realistically, the underlying numbers, they don't scream that Michael Pittman's any different of a player. This is actually the lowest target share number that we have seen with Pittman going back to his rookie season. He's had 23.3% of the Indianapolis Colts targets. His yards per route run, not as high as it was when he was that consistent low end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2. He's at 1.86. I mean, if we're going to be looking at pretty much any statistic across the board, the only thing that stands out is him averaging almost a touchdown a game, but this is a touchdown rate of over 10%. There's no way that this kind of touchdown rate is going to keep up, and I think you could have some regression overall for the Indianapolis Colts offense. That's a rush first unit that's going to get Alec Pierce back anyway, that has Josh Downs now fully healthy, that Tyler Warren is taking target volume. So I don't have Pittman as like a wide receiver 1 in my rankings for my underdog teams. I really hope he turns out to be a wide receiver 1 rest of season. But instead, I actually have him as a low-end wide receiver 2 in the same range as like Zay Flowers, DK Metcalf, Xavier Worthy, and Chris Olave. Looking at the trade finder on flockfantasy.com, an example of a trade I'd like making. Somebody traded James Cook, Tucker Kraft, Michael Pittman for Puka Nacua, Brock Bowers. I know you're probably not going to be able to get that, but I thought it was funny to see. Now, our last sell high candidate, I know you're not going to get a ton for him. You're essentially just going to use him in a 2-for-1 deal to upgrade elsewhere. Jordan Addison's averaging about 15.5 points per game so far this season, but he only played like 75% of the game last week, and he's only played 2 games overall. I mean, so you would say you extrapolate this out, you get him back to the 93% of snaps that he had in week 4 going into the future, he's going to be much better. But here's my issue with Jordan Addison. I'm going to keep it stupid simple. You are looking at a passing offense that is not providing consistent production for Justin Jefferson of all players. So with Addison, I think you are going to be looking at a touchdown or bust wide receiver, or you're going to need the big play. He had the big play in week 4 against Pittsburgh. He had the touchdown in week 5 against Cleveland. And yes, he scored 15 points in both of those games. But it does not change my mind that he is just a boom or bust wide receiver that you can throw in your flex spot during the buys. If you're in like a 10-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, 12-team, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex, outside of a Jefferson injury or outside of a massive McCarthy breakout, I don't see how he turns into an every week set it and forget it type player. But I really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. And again, if you wanted to check out any of those pick'ems over on Underdog Fantasy, you can find that link in the description as well as the comment section. Promo code FLOCK is going to get you $100 added to your account after you play your first 5. Plus, you'll get a free Jalen Hurts pick, higher, lower, half a total yard for the Thursday night game. Underdog Fantasy is available in almost every single state. And hell, it's my birthday in a couple days, so if you want to give me a birthday present, sign up with code FLOCK. But plus, you'll get free questions that you can ask me in the live streams that we're doing every single day. But that's all I got for you. I appreciate you, and I really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.